Yes. So as we stop, I'd like to welcome everyone to the Diversity Summit. Our topic this morning is women in finance. We're joined by a number of very successful women who have attended Geneseo and have moved into the workforce and have been successful. Just as a comment, the views that I may express or any of our panelists don't necessarily represent the views of the State University of New York College at Geneseo, nor do they necessarily represent the views of any of the firms that our panelists work for. So with that disclosure done, I'd like to start off the panel. Welcome, everybody. Purpose is to learn. So the first question, and we're going to do this very open-ended. Some of you have been on these calls where we just talk, and if you want to have a comment, you can put it in the chat. You can just jump in. So what I'd like to do is just take a minute and go around and have our panelists introduce themselves. You should see their names, have their graduation date right after it. If you could just give us a 1-2 minutes of what's your career path? Where did you start? What have you learned? Where have you gone? Just so that we get a good sense of who you are. So Jamie, can we start with you?
Sure. Yep. So I graduated from Geneseo in 2018. I went right to Deloitte in New York City in the audit department, and I stayed there for about 3 years. And then after that, I decided I wanted to do something a little different. So I went to CCMP Capital, which is a private equity firm in New York City. And I'm in the finance department there.
What does it mean to be in the finance department of a firm like that?
Yep.
What do you do?
Yeah, my company is about 20 people total, so it's pretty small. So our finance group is 5 people. So we run pretty much the day-to-day. Anytime there's a capital call that we need from investors, or we need to call management fees or set up a new fund, we're kind of involved in that and looking at the allocations from investors and making sure we're calling the right money from the right people. And when we're buying a company, making sure that we are kind of all on the same page with the diligence and the valuations there.
Okay. What's the most important skill you use in your job every day?
I'd definitely say the ability to be able to multitask. There's always about 8 different things going on, and making sure you can follow up on the items that are important and not let anything slip through the cracks.
Okay. Shauna.
Hi, good morning. Well, I graduated in 2002, so I might talk for a little bit extra time because you're all the youngins else on the panel here. When I left Geneseo, I joined PricewaterhouseCoopers. I became a CPA. I was obviously working in the audit area. I started to specialize in some of the financial services with the firm. So mutual funds, insurance companies, banks. Kind of fell into NBT Bank a little bit by happenstance, more for personal reasons and relocation. I became the corporate controller about 14 years ago here at the bank. NBT Bank is top 100 bank in the country in terms of our size, located in kind of the southern tier of New York. So I was a corporate controller, and then I moved into the chief risk officer position. I oversaw audit and compliance and a lot of other risk management functions in the bank. And now I'm an executive overseeing the consumer lending department, which is our mortgage, auto, and home equity portfolios, as well as the executive in charge of the retirement plan administration organization that sits out of Rochester.
Well, how many people do you have on your team?
The record keeper is about 300, and the consumer lending team is about 100.
What is one thing that you wish you would have known when you graduated from college that you know now?
How important all those team projects are, and how important your network is. Really, the network is the way you get things done.
Okay, great. Annalise.
Hi. So I graduated in 2019. I have actually been with Northwestern Mutual. I interned my senior year and I stuck with the company. I've moved around a little bit. So after interning, I turned on my full-time advisor contract. And then I switched over and worked on advisors team in the Syracuse area for a few years. And now I'm still with Northwestern Mutual, but I moved over. I was lucky enough to stay with the company and move over to the Denver office. So I'm here in Denver now. So it's been really nice to stay with the company. There's a lot of lateral and vertical growth allowed in the company. but I am currently on an advisor's team out here.
What are some of the things you do in your day-to-day job?
Yeah, so Northwestern Mutual is like holistic financial planning. So we do a lot of personal planning as well as a little bit of business planning. It's a lot of investment allocation, tax mitigation strategies, retirement planning, risk planning. So it's pretty much like, you know, the whole picture, but we do a lot of client servicing. I do a lot of client-facing activities as well as the back-end like investment planning piece of it.
Okay. Now, how did you end up transferring? I mean, was it easy for you to pick up and move to Denver? How was the firm supportive of that? How did you deal with that?
It was actually incredibly seamless. It was like almost too easy to transfer, which is one of the big perks of working for such a big company. So each advisor at the company is obviously independently contracted, but within the organization, there's a ton of communication. It's really, there's a lot of support that you get here. So I picked up and I just decided I was going to move this summer, and I was just going to work remotely for a little bit. And I actually did that for a few months, just working, you know, because COVID made that possible, obviously, to just work from pretty much wherever. So I was working for a New York-based advisor for a little bit, and then I just decided I need the in-person contact. So I just had someone refer me in, and within 2 weeks, I was placed with a new team. And here I am. So it was actually, I'd say that's the best thing about working for a company this size with this sort of communication is that, you know, the possibilities are kind of endless.
Okay. Tiffany, I expected to have chocolate chip cookies here on my desk this morning.
Oh my gosh, you always talk about that.
Yep,
So
I
hi,
never forget
everyone.
that, Tiffany.
I like baking when I was in college. It's like,
Do you do that
really good,
anymore?
it's like a little busier with work, but with COVID, I've gone into like experimenting with some stuff. Like I think the first thing I made in COVID was like a little cake, but it like came out like sloppy. So, but you know, perfecting it over time, but it's fine. So hi everyone, really nice to meet you guys. I graduated in 2017, so kind of crazy to think that it's almost been like 4 to 5 years now. Yeah, it's kind of crazy. So I started off like 2.5 years of my career at PwC, where I worked in their pinch due diligence practice, and it was really working with a lot of growth to late stage companies. And while I was there, I got to like present a lot of my findings to C-suite, and I kind of got like really interested in the beginning process of that. So, you know, not really looking at like more established products or services, but more like understanding what was it in the very beginning, right? So like thinking early stage investments, things like that, startups. So that kind of sparked my interest to kind of move more towards the VC realm. So, and also backtrack, I was also really interested in debt financing as well. So after 2.5 years, I moved to Fitch Ratings, and I've been here for about like almost a little over 2 years.
What did you do
while
there?
I was at Fitch Ratings,
Yeah.
I worked in their credit analyst program. So did a lot of like ESG is like a really big thing now. And then just working a lot of like structured products and kind of understanding, you know, this kind of like health pandemic and how it's kind of affected everyone, and also different asset classes. So that's what I've been doing here at Fitch. But additionally, because I was really interested in learning about early stage startups, I work for a couple of venture capital firms. So on the side, I work for Hearst Labs, which funds women-led startups. And then I also work for Level Up Ventures, which is more focused on the Black and Latinx entrepreneurs. So really helping them to understand, okay, what are like the pain points of your company? What are like the milestones that you want to reach in order to further fundraise? So you can think like startups are like, for example, like Bumble, right? Like that was just acquired by Blackstone, but that's an example. Like it's just like founders who kind of create an idea and then they want to reach certain milestones to either A, IPO, or be acquired by a different company. So,
So you work
I
for
found that
multiple
exciting.
companies?
I do, yeah. So
So are you like a gig worker?
Am I what?
A
Sorry?
gig worker that you just, how do you get these jobs?
Yeah, so well, a lot of it, like, you know, kind of Shauna said, networking is a huge, huge deal. And I think I've really just kind of relied on my network to get to where I want it to be. So Hearst owns Fitch, and I found out about the Hearst Lab venture capital that way. And then just doing like a lot of networking within the space, within the ecosystem, and really just trying to be plugged in. So it's really like
I split my time between that, but I actually just ended my job at Fitch Ratings. But if you guys want a referral in, I can definitely, they're hiring like crazy and can definitely help you guys get a job there. But right now my focus is really on venture capital because that's always something that's been very interesting to me.
How do you feel you're competing against, that you have an unfair advantage when you're competing for some of these jobs with men?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I feel like when I was in school, at least, everyone was talking about private equity. Private equity, it's like a big thing. VC, it's very hard to break into, right? It's completely dominated by men. And it's really just, you know, finding those gaps and being like, okay, like I know like almost all my coworkers are men. And like, how do I kind of navigate that and also voice my opinions and, you know, not feel like I'm not being heard, you know? And I think a lot of that is just how you frame your conversations and also just like, you know, be a real advocate for your own career and yourself.
Interesting. So when you network, who do you network with? Just to give us a sense for some of our students here, is how do you approach that? I'll come back to everybody else in a minute on the same question.
Sure.
But Tiffany, go ahead.
Sure. I mean, I guess I can answer that more generally or just for specifically for venture capital. So in venture capital, a lot of it is really sourcing really good companies and finding those quality founders that are going to be like the next Facebook, next Google. And a lot of that you have to rely on like your network, right? So with entrepreneurs, it's really doing a good job with the portfolio companies that we acquire. And then, you know, there's a referral process there. And then also networking with the broader investor community. So it's really understanding, okay, who are the other investors in this space? And how can I like meet them? Are there like events that are happening, right? Or are there like groups on like Slack channels or like Medium posts that people talk about, right? So it's really just being like plugged into the market and understanding what's going on in the ecosystem and who do I know in my network that can introduce me to XYZ person that is more aligned with my investment criteria. So it's really just, you know, doing a good job with the people that is working with you, and then also building those relationships and never doing a like, can you give me something, but more like, how can I help you, right? So it's always like having this give first mindset, and that way you build more genuine relationships that I think is beneficial throughout finance or whatever career anyone chooses to go
How did you
into.
learn to do all of this stuff?
I don't know. I mean, I guess it's always been innate in my personality in a lot of ways to kind of reach out to people and meet people, because I think truly your strongest superpower is yourself. And I think that was a kind of mind shift that I had for myself when I was in college, because I realized I was like, okay, I go to Geneseo, and unfortunately, sometimes people don't know what the college is, right? So you struggle with that barrier. And the second barrier is like, you know, I have like, you know, female versus male, different ethnicities. So it's like, there's a lot of factors that go into, I guess, recruiting. And I think it's kind of saying, okay, like, there's a lot of people at Geneseo that's really smart. And, you know, maybe I'm not going to be like the brightest person, but I can just be myself. And I can just like give all of who I am and introduce who I am to someone else. And, you know, ultimately the way I see it is, if, you know, there are really good people out there, we have a really strong alumni network, and people often will want to help you because they recognize your struggle. They recognize that, you know, I've been to Geneseo too, and like, it was hard to get a job, you know, or, you know, like, even if they're not from Geneseo, like people realize that they were once early in their career as well, and they had to navigate their journey as well. So I think it's just creating this mind shift of saying, everyone is on a journey to get to where they want to be, to find their passion, their purpose in life. And I mean, I'm still on that journey as well. You know me, like, I think I was doing like several things in college, and you always told me to focus. And then even now, like, I'm just curious about a lot of things. So it's just really being like, I have confidence in myself, or at least like try to have confidence in myself and move forward from that. I think that's kind of like the paradigm that I've taken for my life.
Shauna, you have a long career. Positive, I mean, in a positive way. How have you seen, you've worked in, again, primarily when you started, a primarily male environment.
Yeah.
What has been your experience? And then what has changed since 2002?
Oh, since 2017. Well, okay. I mean, I think one of the biggest things that's changed for me is just my outlook on things. Like, I think when I first started and I graduated, I was like, okay, I have a plan. I'm gonna spend 2 years here, and then I'm gonna get my MBA, and then I'm gonna do this, and I'm gonna do this. And I was like, all right, here's like milestones I'm gonna reach for my life. But what I realized, in the past 5 years is that it's not like a straight line. And I think everyone told me that, but I had to go through it myself to really realize that it's a lot of like ups and downs and all around, right? Like, I'm sure Jamie can even talk about this too, because she went to the Big Four, and everyone here who's been working, Emily as well. Like, when I started working at PwC, when I was doing very rough hours, like I was there until like 5, 6 in the morning. It was very unpredictable. And it was like my entire group of people that were working with me was men. So it's, again, navigating that, like, I can be here too. I can do this job too. And I just need to like work hard, and I will be recognized, or I'll prove to myself more than other people that I can do this and I belong. So it's really, that's kind of, I think, the best advice I have for anyone. And that's really like the outlook I've taken on for myself.
Okay. Tess, why don't you introduce yourself and what you're doing and such?
Yeah, awesome. Okay, so I graduated in 2019. I was an accounting major with a finance minor. Went to Goldman Sachs in their Manhattan office and started in internal audit for graduation, and was in internal audit for about a year. And then I did internal mobility. We have like a whole program here if you want to go to a different division and try a new role. And I interviewed in our private wealth management department for roles in both New York and Houston. Got both location offers, but decided to take the Houston one because that gave me a lot more doors for going out west, possibly to California. I also help support teams more across the country in this role. So that's where I currently am. I've been in this seat for about a year and a half now. Really enjoying it. It's definitely much more finance forward. I had to get my Series 7 and 63 to sit in this role. Active trader on a day-to-day basis. So I work mainly with high net worth individuals and clients, some foundations and charities, but they'll call in to trade, talk about different private equity investments. We do a lot of different asset transfer, estate and trust planning. That's really like the nuts and bolts of my day-to-day. My role is described as like the chief operating officer of my group. I support 2 private wealth advisors, and they are the ones who are kind of like out and about recruiting new clients and managing accounts. And that sort of trickles down to my role, where it's very type A, super organized. You are a self-manager, where I kind of operate our team. I manage both up and down the command chain. So really checking in with my advisors, my clients, and my other teammates all the time. Big communication business. I am like the front line. I'm that first person that my clients like to call to talk to celebrate or to complain to. So that is something I think I've started to master. So if communication is your jam and you like to talk to new people all day, all long, private wealth management is definitely a good line of business for you to get into. I'm sure, Annalise, I know you do like similar things. You probably understand how that goes as well. So,
but you were able to move from one part of the organization to another. How was that experience?
Yes.
Annalise made it seem that it worked very well. How did it work for you?
Mine was sounds pretty similar. Definitely always a little tug on the heartstrings when you're leaving your old group. I had a great group in internal audit. That was an awesome division to start in. Really got a good view of the firm being in internal audit and auditing all different aspects of the firm. I sat on the compliance and legal team, which really touches every division because every division has to deal with different legal or compliance like policies and procedures. So got a good view of the firm that way. Really was interested in the private wealth management audits that I was tasked on, and kind of dove into applying to those roles through that chain. Had great support from my manager to pursue it, especially going from more of a back office, third line of defense role to a front office role where we're more revenue producing. But it was really easy. I think the hardest part was moving during a pandemic, but again, definitely more settled in now. It's been, like I said, about a year in Houston, year and a half in the role, was remote for a bit, but finally have my feet underneath me, and it's been great. I also have been able to help support teams in Philly, teams in LA, and then teams back in New York in this new role as well, which I don't know if I'd have that opportunity if I stayed in New York. So definitely exposed to a lot more pieces of the business with the move.
Yeah, excellent. Thank you. We're going to take sometimes things just happen, and I'm going to just share my screen, hopefully, with you and introduce you to Steve Barth. And why am I asking Steve to come? Steve, are you there?
I'm here, Bob.
Yeah. If you could maybe, this was just sort of one of these interesting things that happened this morning is Steve sends me this. And Steve is at Credit Suisse. Why don't you just introduce yourself and what you do and what Credit Suisse is?
Absolutely. So my name's Steve Barth. I graduated in 2013 from Geneseo, finance major. I work at Credit Suisse, which is a global investment bank. I work in our equities division within the investment bank. So I provide advisory services to institutional money managers. And have been in this role for 5 or 6 years now. So so Bob's showing a program that we're running this year called the Women's Mentor Program. This is aimed at college sophomores, females, who are interested in gaining access to senior leaders at Credit Suisse and learning more about the businesses within an investment bank. And so this is going to be a virtual program that we're running from April 4th to April 8th. And as I said, it's a great opportunity to learn more about the business, to build relationships with senior leaders within Credit Suisse. And it also gives you a nice head start in terms of applying for our summer analyst internship program in 2023. Kind of a unique opportunity here. Wanted to get this in front of the group here. There are 5 different programs that you can apply to, and I would say, certainly suggest you can and should apply to all that are interesting to you. Those fall across our different divisions. So equity research, asset management, sales and trading, IT, so more the tech side of things, and banking and capital markets, which is what most people think of as traditional investment banking. There's also going to be an information session that walks through the contours of the program tomorrow at noon Eastern time. And you will need to register for that today. There's a link in this flyer to register, and all the links to apply for the program are also in this flyer. So Professor Boyd has this flyer.
And I will send it to everybody. I'll put it in the chat function in a moment.
But just wanted to introduce the program here. We think it's a really unique program at Credit Suisse, and a great opportunity for young women that are interested in the field of finance to get started on their internship path. So happy to take any questions, or certainly if you have any questions, Professor Boyd can pass along my contact information, and I'm happy to help.
I think one of the things that we do these programs, we do these panel discussions, and I think sometimes we need to take intentional action. And I think the action that just popped in today, I'm like, whoa, Steve sent it to me this morning, and I'm like, okay, we got to do this. But again, this is an opportunity. So if you are interested in finance at all, these are opportunities for you. Now, let me just go back and Shauna, if you would have seen this back in 2000, what would have been your reaction? Would have you participated?
Well, I feel so experienced right now, so old. So 2000, yeah. I mean, I think as a sophomore, if I honestly reflect on my career at Geneseo, I don't think I took things, the network pieces and the opportunity pieces more seriously until I was more of a junior. So these things were probably a little bit overwhelming, intimidating, felt like you had to know what you wanted to do to really engage here, right? Like, well, I don't know if I want to be investment banking. I don't want to do something and have people spend time with me that, I may not be interested in down the road, but you don't know until you do things like that. And so, I think one of the things I would say, throughout my career in this, I've tried to keep my doors open about where my next step would be, and really just focus on the experience, the gaining of skills, and the expansion of knowledge, and then let it take you where it goes. And this is a great example from my all of that, but also on the networking side, right? So you're going to meet people in this program. You're going to learn a little bit about Credit Suisse and what they do. You're going to learn a couple of the opportunities that exist, but more importantly, you're going to meet some pretty cool people. And then when you have a question down the road in 2 years about a job application, you may have somebody you can call that can shed a little bit more light on what that opportunity might really be like, or, you know, just lift the cover up for you on something. So I would highly encourage you to take advantage of any of those kinds of things.
You said, you may not know what you want to do. Is there any program that you may have at the bank that is helpful for people that are graduating that might help them get different experiences to figure out what they want to do? And that's a leading question, you know that.
It is, I love it. So we have a management development program, and it's kind of funny, right? So we hire about 8 to 10 college graduates every year to come in and do a rotational program through the bank. And at the end of the program, they get placed into pretty impactful roles throughout the organization. And we interview, the executive team actually does a panel interview process with the candidates, which is, quite a thorough screening process. And I hear a lot of times folks come into the room and say, I want to be in wealth management. And like, well, that's great. But they also come into the room and say, I don't know what I want to do. So I'm really excited about this program because as I rotate through, I can learn more. And that's the mindset that's been really successful. We've had some folks come in. One of our highest graduates of that program came in through a math degree, and he didn't know what he wanted to do. And now he's running our digital banking platform. So he's implemented everything in the last 10 years that has been part of our plan to become more of a digital bank. So, just be open to opportunities. And that is a great example of a program that we've designed specifically around that.
Thank you. Emily, we didn't forget you.
Hi, I'm Emily Earl, but I'm graduated class of 2018 from Geneseo with an economics and a math major. Right out of college, I went to Citi within the sales and trading group, which was actually a rotational program. So I spent a year in rates trading. So
could you maybe tell people what that is? What does that mean?
Yeah, absolutely. Within sales and trading, you basically cover institutional accounts primarily who want to transact in secondary space primarily for stocks, bonds, derivatives, what have you. Within that, you are either on the trading side, a market maker. So you actually take the other side of the institution's trades. You hold that risk, and ideally you try to load it off, making the bid offer. On the sales side, you are the contact person for large institutional accounts. So within U.S. Treasuries trading, which was the desk that I sat on, we basically fielded orders and then traded the risk for large rates cash trades. If you needed to buy 100 million notional worth of 5-year treasuries, we were your call. So that was kind of my first year out of college. After that, I opted for a little more slower pace of a role and went to a research seat. Wasn't really my cup of tea, but it was a great experience. And after that, I wasn't sure what I wanted to do. I heard from an opportunity from somebody who I went to Geneseo with.
The network again.
Correct. That there was actually a seat opening up on his desk at a different bank, doing something that was slower paced than trading, but still had a lot of client interaction, which was something that I really missed in the research seat. So I interviewed for it, got it, and now for the last coming up on 2 years, I've been at Societe Generale on the debt capital markets desk.
Could you maybe tell people what the desk is? Some of us know what the desk is and others may not.
Yep, the debt capital markets broadly is part of the banking and capital markets group within any major bank. We focus on primarily investment grade within my group. So higher rated names, think names like Amazon, McDonald's, what have you. We also cover larger banks, and we cover a handful of sovereign names across North America. And then within that, we focus on debt funding strategies. Where does it make sense, given your debt profile? You know, if I have bonds coming due in 5 years, maybe I need to not have any more debt coming due that year, right? We think strategically, and we think about costs across currencies as well.
Okay, that's good. Now here's another question. Sometimes there's small things get in the way. Obviously, there's big things, and that's a stumbling block for all of us. But is there something that you've had as an obstacle in your career because you're a woman, Jamie?
Yeah, I don't know necessarily because I'm a woman, but I know an obstacle at Deloitte was, I know Annalise and Tess were talking about being able to move around internally at their companies. At Deloitte is a little harder with it being a big four, and I'm not sure if everyone's aware, but there's kind of an migration right now away from audit just because of the long hours. So they were kind of not really willing to let you switch. I was interested in switching from audit to either an advisory or consulting role. And that wasn't really an option unless I wanted to stay in audit for another 2 years. So I made the decision that I was going to try to look for a different job. And during the interview process for that job, it was right when COVID was ramping up. So I actually accepted a job and then got the offer rescinded because they were going home for a year or so. So I stuck at Deloitte for another year. Mm-hmm. And then when I went back to interview again, I know that my company was specifically looking for a woman to hire just because I believe I was the third female hire at our company of 20. So that's something that they're definitely working on. And now it gave me the opportunity when we were hiring last year to hire another female to join.
So you were involved in the hiring process of another female in your firm?
Yep.
Oh, that's great. That's great. Annalise, which same question to you, any obstacles or how you've gotten through them?
So this is, I think, my industry specific, maybe not all of finance. I think a lot of it is because I'm client facing and because it's person to person, like relationship building. I think there is a huge gender bias that I've noticed, and it's taken a while to overcome. And also there's been a huge shift in the industry, but it's been a lot better, but there is an unconscious bias from, I'd say, like clients, and even like if I call our home office, if I call sometimes, typically, like if I have a question for our home office, especially when I was first starting, people would automatically switch to who do you work for, rather than me being my own advisor. It's and I think people maybe don't even realize that they're doing it, but it's like, well, I'm my own advisor, like I don't work for anybody. Or like a lot of times, and it was just a huge pain point for years with the previous advisor. Once I did work for somebody, clients would call me, have a question. I would, I'd be like very willing to help them. I am, I think, probably similar to Tess in that regard, whereas like I am kind of like the COO. I know the answers. I'm doing the research. I'm putting the plans together for this advisor that was more client facing previously. So people would call me and be like, no, I'd actually like to speak to so-and-so. They would ask them the question, they'd come back to me, I'd answer the question. It was a big roundabout way of getting the answer, because they didn't think that I was capable of answering their question. Whereas, I was almost more qualified than my old boss. I've gone through my Series 6, my Series 63, SIE, I have my RICP, CDFA, but because I am young and also a woman, it's, people just assume like, oh, are you their assistant? Are you their scheduling assistant? Are you, and that's just something that is, there's no like good way to get around that, except for the fact that there's been like a lot of movement recently towards inclusion with, women and minorities. And so there's been a lot of work towards that, but I say that's the number one thing. And also just, I think it's our nature as, when I was trying to build a business, and I know we have a lot of study groups and collaboration where a lot of other women in the industry say the same thing, is that we are we tend to have like this imposter syndrome. You know, we worry more about being disliked, about outshining others, grabbing too much attention. It's the way we come off is just seen as different from men. So it's overcoming that and showing, you know, I can be confident without seeming, you know, without people taking it the wrong way. You know, a man could be confident and it's just their nature, but we're overconfident and it's seen as a bad thing almost. So that's just another, it's, you know, there's no good answer for that. But I'd say that's the number one thing that I noticed. It's hard to be successful without other people being, maybe it's intimidated or just the way you're seen, I guess, has been a huge thing to overcome for me.
So you've really you were literally proving yourself by doing exceptional work.
Yeah,
I'd building respect.
Yeah, and I'd say that's another piece of switching your mindset from thinking like, so there's this statistic, I think, and they tell new advisors here, it's to apply for a job, men can only be 60% confident that they can do the job to apply, whereas women have to be 100% typically to think they can apply. So a lot, like, it just goes to show, it's, you know, it's your mindset that's kind of keeping you from achieving these goals, not your actual abilities. So I'd say, like, to help with the mindset switch is like, I need to be as confident in my skills as I can be, so that, like, I know for a fact that I know these things, I am capable and I can prove it, you know. So I'd say that's like the number one advice I'd give to anybody is, you know, don't stop at an undergrad degree. And maybe that doesn't mean go get your MBA or go to law school, or, I mean, that's all great, but even within your career, just keep learning. Like, you know, I read these articles, I'm always getting designations. I am, a lot of it's like the 6 and 63 and the 7, like that's all required. But on top of that, like, it adds value. It not only helps you add value to your clients, but I mean, if you're an asset, or if you're a value add to your company and they see that, then you're appreciated. It also helps salary wise, definitely. I mean, that's another perk, but it's being really confident in yourself comes from, you know, you have to, I think it's kind of like what you were saying before with the internships and stuff. You have to just take initiative and do what you can for yourself.
Sure. Sean, a question back to you. What was going through your mind and thinking when you became a senior officer and you had to go to a senior officer meeting and you were the only woman there? What was going through your mind? Did it, or am I just?
No, it's interesting. I guess I've just always felt like, for me, it was more about my age that I felt was the hurdle in kind of going through my career. And my colleagues have always really respected me. My challenge has been with folks that I've supervised, right? So you're less experienced than me and you're a female, and you know, what do you have to offer me as my new boss, as I moved into different roles across the organization? That's it. When you ask about obstacles, for me, that's been the biggest obstacle. I think part of the reason I haven't had the same challenge kind of with the senior team or the executive team is because you worked hard, as others said, you worked hard and you demonstrated your value and your worth, and it didn't matter who you were or, you know, what you looked like or how old you were, because they were seeing the value of what you're bringing to the table. I think it's changed a lot over the years though, too, right? So, you know, in 2002, PricewaterhouseCoopers, very, you know, old school kind of traditional hierarchical structure. And there's nothing wrong with that. I feel like I learned quite a bit being in that organization for 6 to 7 years, but male dominated and just very hierarchical. Coming into the bank, having a lot of opportunities. And I had this career moment like a couple of weeks ago, and I want to share it with you because I think it's really relevant, and it's really so awesome to see a lot of men on this listening to this panel as well. Our executive team is 8 individuals. It's 50% female. And when we had an executive team meeting the other day, and our CEO, who's male, walked into the room, and it just happened that the folks that were in the room that day were, because we're hybrid on some days, so the folks who were in the room that day were all female and the male counterparts were virtual. So when he walked in, he just took this second and he said, wow, Like, 10 years ago, we had one female executive, and guess who it was? The director of HR, right? Now we have 4 female executives out of a 8-person team. And so, I think that just shows the evolution of where we've come from. And you're really fortunate to be coming into a time where there's so much focus on this, so that, you're not given a hurdle of your gender as, in terms of, being handed a challenge in terms of your advancement. And I just want to underscore something I think Tiffany said. I have a poster on my wall at home, and it says, you are you, and that is your superpower. I have never not owned the fact that I'm a woman in the room. I've never downplayed my femininity or my emotional side. I mean, I walked around here pregnant for 2 years, and talked about it and talk about my kids all the time. And I cried in meetings when I've been frustrated. I just own who I am. And I think that's made the male counterparts respect me, and also see the value that women, there's certain skills that we have or characteristics that we have that are different. And I think they see the value in that. And personally, I think it makes me a really strong leader.
Tess, go back to you said you manage up and down. How do you
Yeah,
manage?
so
Tell us about that. I mean, some of us that have been around for a while understand how that works really good. But can you maybe give some sense of how you do it and what it means for those that are all
Yeah.
new?
Sure, yeah, of course. So I have 2 advisors. They're both men, they're male, but there's a lot of female advisors in my office as well. But my advisors travel a ton. So a lot of the times I'm the one communicating with clients, and I still need my advisor to kind of either come in and agree on something that I suggest, give their perspective, or maybe look at whatever I'm suggesting from like a new way and see if it fits with the client. So that's the managing up part, where I constantly have to be aware of their schedule and make sure I navigate the client's expectations with that like ever-changing schedule that they have. And then I manage down in a sense for analysts that are like below me, teaching, kind of passing off new tasks to them to make them fully integrated into like the role that I do, so I can eventually move up. So that's like the managing up and down, really being the like touchstone for my team, where I have to both make sure that my advisors are on the same page, and then me and my other teammates are on the same page. That way, when a client calls any of us, we're a pretty like lean team. There's 4 of us. We're aware of everything that's going on. It's not like, oh God, where is that missing puzzle piece that is a trade that we were supposed to make that just never happened. So really being like super organized and on point works well. Both of my advisors are they were in the military. One guy was in Air Force, one guy was in the Navy. So they run a very tight ship, but I think I fit pretty well into that. I'm definitely a type A person, not to say that you can't be type B in this role. You can definitely flourish type A, type B, whatever, however your organizational skills are. It's just making sure that you and your team operate well together. Played a sport at Geneseo. I think that skill set kind of helps, just being in that team mentality. It's really important for any line of business you decide to go into, making sure you and the team are on the same page.
Okay, great. Emily, back to you. Have you had any obstacles or anything in your career being a woman? In that I know you work with a huge number of men when you started in trading. Were you the only woman or one of the few?
I was the only, at the time, I was the only woman in trading. At the time I joined my current team, I was the only woman on the team. I think that is a pretty common experience, depending, well, particularly in trading, it's a very common experience, but kind of across a lot of the like kind of banking front office roles. That's a pretty common way to start out. I think that it has maybe occasionally been like a cultural obstacle in that, I'm not hugely into sports, things like that, right? Just not my personality, but I don't think it's been a huge hindrance. I think maybe it takes slightly more time, but that's always true. And I think at the end of the day, as has been mentioned before, right, a lot of your career is about building relationships with people who you don't necessarily have things in common with. And that's kind of a skill. And I think that that's kind of a nice opportunity to be able to hone that.
Okay. So you feel like you're actually belong to the team,
Yeah,
not just the
absolutely.
token woman.
Yeah. Well, it also, I should say, I was the only woman when I joined the team. Now there are 3 women total on our 8-person team. Same thing in my previous roles. It changes over time, right? And you know, even in the couple of years that I've been here, or been in the industry, I should say, the focus has remained to get women into the seats, and that's been pretty successful.
Okay. Tiffany, I'm not going to ask you the same question.
Okay.
Where are you going next? What's your next, where's your long-term plan? Where are you going? What's the next thing you want to do?
I mean, I really love the work of venture capital. I love being able to, you know, be on the investment team and make these decisions and help these founders understand their go-to-market strategy, their pain points. How do I help them prepare for a fundraising round? You know, and this idea of like leaning into your network and like just learning about all the different investments that will one day be, you know, financed by other people, right? Like other like bigger name companies as time goes on. So for me, it's like the journey of how do I become like a better investor? Because ultimately I feel like that's where I am most passionate about.
Do you think we could see you as a CFO, CEO of one of these new firms that are growing, and all of a sudden, you know, they're going to do a public offering of $5 billion and we see your name out there as the CFO? Do you think that's in reach?
Well, actually, I've been asked to be that role, head of capital markets, CFO for a startup, for a fintech company. But I feel at this point in my career, I just need a little bit more. I didn't feel like it was the right time to really go into that role. It's a little risky, you know, to join a startup that and be a person of that role. And I think, you know, I'm grateful for all the experiences I've had. But, you know, for me, my goal is not to really be a CFO or a controller, but it's really more to be like an investor and someone who, because I think like ultimately, right? I mean, every person in finance affects and leaves an impact on everyone else, right? It's all like a domino effect in my mind. But I think like being on the forefront of helping these people who are having an idea and it's going to affect many people is something I'm very passionate about, because I just think that's so cool, you know. And I'm happy to kind of talk about some of the things that like example of companies I've worked on that I've really enjoyed. I think that's my end goal for now, at least, but I'm still figuring it out. Like I said, it's all a journey and nothing's ever a straight path. And ultimately my best advice for everyone here is, you know, you're the person who's pioneering your career at the end of the day. And just because like some things don't work out, or, you know, you don't get a job, or you get a rejection, or whatever happens to you at work, like you have a bad day at work, like just know that like things will always kind of work out, and you're kind of like, again, a pioneer of your career, and things will shape out to what will come to you, you know, because I could tell you it took me a long time to kind of figure out what it is that I'm passionate about, and not just like, okay, I'm going to work in finance, I'm going to be in, you know, work in accounting, I'm going to work in finance, like I'm going to be in New York City. Like those were always like my goals when I was in college, when I was in your seat. But then as I've gained a little bit more experience, I've realized that it's more than just a job that pays you money, but it's also like you have to be passionate about what you do.
Passion and line with your values.
Exactly, because you're going to be doing this. I mean, the way I see it is I'm going to be doing this until I retire. So I have to definitely find something I like. So, but you guys will all find it within time too.
For sure. We're going to open up for some questions, but one of the things, a number of you people have done things with me like this, and usually I want to go around and get one word from everybody that's here of what their takeaway was, what their learning point was. So we start with Madeline Schuler. You have a question.
Yes, I actually do have a question. So, Shauna, I was very interested in the beginning when you were talking about networking and stuff, and I know you've been in this business for a long time. So, could you maybe tell me a little bit about how like you get into that?
Yeah, so I mean, I thanks for the question. I mean, I think just treating every interaction that you have literally from here on out as a potential relationship that you may need or may want to expand upon in the future, whether it's professional or personal, I should say, really, you know. my ability to find the job here at NBT Bank was the headhunter. I actually was a classmate of mine at Geneseo. So now I have this really great career that I'm super happy with and, you know, passionate about, to use other words here. So that's something. I feel like if any of you have ever lived in did you grow up in a small town? I grew up in a really small town. And one of the things about that was really annoying, right? Everybody knew everybody, and like everybody knew your business and all that stuff. But now, like an industry that you choose, finance, banking, whatever it is, it's actually like a little bit of a small town, right? And if you know your neighbor and you know who to call to get, you know, your fence fixed, but now you're calling for a different reason. I just feel like that mentality is something that, you know, as a child, I always felt like living in a small town was a detriment. But I feel like keeping that mentality with you as you go through your college career and then your early career days, and just remembering that it's a small world. Every relationship can be important to you down the road. You're having an impact on them. They may need you in the future. You may need them. Community banking is all about, you know, giving back to the community and helping folks in the community reach their financial goals, whether it's, you know, the big commercial customer or the, you know, mom and pop store or things like that. So every time I walk out the door in any community that the bank is in, you know, being kind and just, you know, just investing in a conversation could lead to a business opportunity, either for your company or for yourself. So that's kind of how I think about it.
Anybody else want to add on that one? Okay, we have a question from Jocelyn.
Hello. So this is for anybody on the panel, but how you guys as women or as younger women approach bringing, consider like a softer topic at important meetings that are generally dominated by males.
Can you repeat just the last part of that? I don't think I caught the whole question.
Yeah. So how do you, as a woman or a younger woman, approach asking or bringing up topics that might be considered softer topics at meetings that are dominated generally by males?
I'll answer that one. I'd say a lot of it goes back to what a lot of us said about, first of all, just confidence. Confidence in yourself, like not being really afraid to speak up. And then another piece of that is just being like your authentic self. You know, I think you would be surprised to see, which I've worked on a lot in the past few years, as you know, since I started working, is just people appreciate a different opinion, and they appreciate you know, having other points of view. And so I think you speaking up is actually refreshing for some people. You know, so having a group of male dominated, say you're in a meeting, that, you know, whatever you bring up may actually differ from their opinion, but that's actually probably, maybe that's what's best. And it's, you know, that's how you lead to compromise. That's how you lead to that actually, weirdly, I think Professor Joswell is actually on this call, but I think we discussed it in organizational behavior. And I think about it actually a lot, because if people don't speak up and you don't collaborate, you're not going to come to the best, you know, decision for whether it's the client or, you know, whoever. And I've learned over the years that like having a voice is actually so important. And, you know, it's important for you to get your point across and to feel good about, you know, what you're doing, but it's also, people really do appreciate having another opinion. So just like being, you know, being confident in what you're saying and knowing that you're valued is just kind of, it's like, again, it's just a lot of mindset.
Great. Question for Maman.
So my question for today is for every professional woman on the Zoom today. I know that companies like Salesforce and Microsoft they have special quotas for different genders, and they are strong advocates of gender equality in the workplace. And there are also other companies that do not have special quotas, not necessarily because they believe in discrimination, but they believe in market capitalization, profit maximization, and they hire employees irrespective of their gender. So do you think there is a special need for a special quota to be imposed on organizations in order to hire women and other genders? And how would that help?
I can start if that's okay. I think it's a great, very insightful question. And I will be honest with you. I don't think that quotas are necessarily the way to go. We do more of a kind of monitoring and trending analysis, and we monitor and trend, about gender, with ethnicity, race, and look at how we're doing creating a diverse workforce. I felt at times, that, I've had comments from like peers of mine or friends of mine, even in jest, right? Well, you're an executive under the age of 40 because you're a woman and they need more women on the executive team, right? And that's taking away from the accomplishments that we, all of us women have made, and it minimizes, right, your success. So I believe in not having those quotas, because we should be hiring the best person for the job. We should just be looking harder for the best person for the job. And we should be looking beyond what's the stereotypical in the past has been the best person. And somebody raised the point, Annalise, maybe about, encouraging more applicants, right? So encouraging the women who only think they meet 60%, or, they don't think they meet 100% of the job criteria, but getting them to raise their hand and express an interest to encourage more applicants. I think that's our responsibility. And I think with that, you'll see the trends go in the right direction.
Excellent.
Thank
Excellent.
you.
Any other questions?
Professor, I have another question. It's for Tiffany, actually, if she's still here.
I'm here.
Yeah, she's back. She had technical
Okay.
difficulties.
Yeah, my
So,
video froze for a second. but
Venture
here.
capitalism is something that I'm really interested in. And since you're in that field, I have a question for you. There are ideas coming up every minute of the day. There are new startups
Yeah.
every hour. So what are some of the really important things venture capitalist firm looks into while making a decision in order to invest or acquire?
Yeah, I mean, that's a really good question. I would say, from a VC standpoint, if you're looking to be on the VC team, my advice to you would be pick a sector within VC that's like, an industry that you're very passionate about. So maybe that's like ed tech, maybe that's the creator economy, maybe that's, I don't know, whatever sector you think is really interesting. There's a lot of things talking about like blockchain, NFTs, the metaverse, that's like super hot now. So it's really just picking like one sector and then like developing your thoughts on it, right? So, I think like XYZ sector is great because this is like all the macroeconomic factors happening right now. And like, these are some companies that like kind of mimic that or was really successful in this space. And that's why like, maybe XYZ company that you're looking to, work with, whatever VC fund, you can pitch it to them and then say, this is all the research I've done. This is what I know about it. This is who I am. And like, this is why we should invest in XYZ company.
Actually, we have one more question.
Sorry, Professor, just one more question for Tiffany. I'm sorry. So when you guys decide to invest in a company, do you, in the beginning of the year, do you have a set target for what company you want to invest? Like what sector you want to invest in? Like 20% of your acquisitions would be in a particular sector, the other 20% in some other, or do you diversify, or is it just focused on one sector?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's very dependent on what firm like is running that investment. So it's really dependent on who's like, who are the partners in like the VC firm, and then what do they concentrate in. So I wouldn't say that it's like, oh, we're real. There's a lot of talk around the metaverse and NFTs and blockchain. So we're going to do like 30% of our investments in here this year. Like that's not how it is. I would say it's more like everyone is kind of tagged to an industry that you're like really passionate about. And then as a firm as a whole, they'll say, okay, we're targeting 4 to 6 investments this year, or we're targeting like, 10 investments this year. But like the diligence, the closing loop process of like everything from getting the entrepreneur, understanding their pitch deck, understanding what is the problem they're trying to solve, and then getting to the point where you're going to invest is quite a long process. I would say it's not very quick because As you know, if you're really interested in startups, happy also to connect with you, to talk with you further on it, maybe introduce you to some people. But it's really like there's no proven amount of like financials to prove that that startup is going to be successful. So then the due diligence process of evaluating the startup becomes a really big deal. And so it's really just doing a lot of legwork and understanding the market overall, and then to also understand like the startup itself and where it kind of fits in it.
That's great. If you have other questions, I'm going to go around real quick and ask everybody one word or idea, including the panelists. Alec, you're top of my list. Any thoughts? One word. We'll see who's here.
I'm very put on the spot, but my takeaway was that women are powerful. I've always preached that mentality. So that is my big takeaway. A lot of powerful women alumni that we had in this call, and very appreciative for all the info that they like gave us and stuff. So that's my more than a word, but yeah.
Sydney.
Be confident.
Okay, great. David.
I also said confident, just being
Lily.
out there, trying new things.
Lily.
Creating your own future.
Professor Jaswala.
Confidently authentic.
Good. Owen.
Confidence is a key to success.
Eric.
Progression.
Professor Jan.
More women in finance.
Madeline.
I'm my greatest asset.
Aman.
Importance of diversity in a workplace.
Professor Quinn.
Network early and often. Don't be afraid to jump into the process.
Okay, Tim.
Insightful.
Okay, great. Christian.
Listen and be open-minded.
Alexis.
Inspired.
Caitlin. Shira.
Switch up your mindset.
Okay, great. Let's see where we are here. Kennedy.
Enlightening.
Haley.
Networking.
Andrea. Victoria.
Making sure your voice is heard.
Rachel.
Empowering.
Thank you. I would like to take this opportunity to thank each and every one of you for being here. Jamie, Shauna, Annalise, Emily, Tess, thank you for joining us and sharing so openly, and Tiffany too, sharing so openly and honestly. I think from my perspective, you've given me hope that there's tremendous opportunities out there, especially for women. So thank you all very, very much. And we look forward to talking to you again.
Thanks so much for having me.
Everybody have a good day.
Thank you.